This is my blog, the URL address, and I'm available on Twitter at Dr. spelled out D-O-C-T-O-R, Wes, W-S, on the Twitter account. Everything I say here is fully vetted on this blog, and has links, hyperlinks to all of the information that I'm going to provide. Basically, I'm going to very quickly, in a short 15-minute, I'm hoping to stay to that period of time, kind of review what's going on. I am triple board certified. I guess I'd like to say I'm proud to say that. I'm actually disappointed to say that now, because I believe the maintenance of certification brand, particularly the ABMS MOC brand, has many problems, but its brand now is completely corrupt, and the financial issues are just part of the problem. It all began, this is not a very small story, it's actually a long, arduous story, and I'll try to simplify it very much. In 1986, the American Board of Internal Medicine decided unilaterally, on their own, along with, in kind of copying some other boards that were having a little bit of financial challenges, to see if there was another way that they could generate revenue. And they decided to do away with lifetime certification. Realized that the board certification and to be board certified in medicine was really done for the philosophy of making sure physicians were adequately trained to practice their subspecialty, and I think that's what all people want out there. Unfortunately, what happened is the philosophic change, and the excuse they used for this change of making a lifetime certification go to time limited was that as physicians got older, they lost their skills, and they needed to keep coming back and relearning things, and therefore they would be able to help people and improve physician excellence. We want our doctors to be excellent physicians, not just adequate physicians. And of course, it was also an amazing fund driver for the ABIM. Every 10 years, they're going to get another influx of cash because they're going to make it absolutely paramount that you had to do this. It was not a suggested thing. At first, they tried that. It didn't work. It was called continuous professional development. No one signed up for it because they were too busy taking care of patients. And so what they said is, you know what, we're going to make it time limited. And in 1990, every new physician that took board certification therefore had to undergo this process every 10 years. Unfortunately, that philosophy turned to actually age discrimination, because the very people that they said weren't trained long-term and needed repeated stuff, okay, they grandfathered, okay? But the young people, they were slamming and making sure that they kept that financial pipeline going on a continuous basis. So that became their first clue that there was a problem with this, and a lot of doctors kind of spoke up about that, but nothing really happened because, gee, this is a pretty good money train that we can keep going. And needless to say, I've done this 3 times, and with the 3rd time, after all of the new things that have been added over the years, to have to keep doing this, and the amount of time and getting up at 4:30 in the morning trying to do this before I went into a full day's work to try and study the Encyclopedia Britannica of Medicine, to be able to get through the day and continue to do what I do was beyond any comprehension of what I imagine I would have to do at this stage in my career. Needless to say, when we look at how people think about defining physician excellence, I think most real-world patients would say it's a guy with years of experience, a good communicator, makes eye contact, takes a detailed history, a physical exam, is knowledgeable, constantly is relearning and applying what he learns, okay, is empathic, and maybe for a surgeon it's a slightly different definition. Maybe he's got great dexterity and he's gotten bailed out of really tough complications. That's what patients expect, okay, for excellence. What the ABIM and ABMS expect is that the best place to learn medicine is on a computer. You should memorize everything really well, pay us $23,000 every 10 years, be willing to be coerced into signing a contract at the time you sign up for this program, accept old, cleverly questioned database questions from, that are outdated as being gospel, okay? And don't ask questions about any of this stuff because we know what's best for you, and all you gotta do is just pass the test. And if you can do that, that's how the ABIM right now is defining excellence in recertification. The cost analysis came out in a peer-reviewed journal, which I've quoted here, of how much this costs a doctor to do. It is not just the cost of the fees that we have to pay, but it's also the time. And that's 90% of the cost of maintenance of certification is time. And that, unfortunately, translates to an awful lot of time away from the patient's bedside. And that's what we're getting away from. And right now, there's a record amount of burnout in physicians and suicide rates. And the reason is a lot because of things like this. And we need to do away with these unnecessary requirements. There is no profession in the United States of America that requires recertification except medicine. The lawyers don't have to do it, okay? They do their bar exam, they're in, okay? Just like we should do our board certification and be in. If we need to do CME, I'm fine with that. And I think that's appropriate. But to have to go through and be extorted into paying this kind of money is inexcusable. Not to mention the fact that there's no proof that it does anything to improve patient quality, okay? And this is not just me saying this is peer-reviewed journals saying this, including the ABIM's own study. There was no difference in the quality outcomes of patients with people who participated in MOC versus those who do not. And then we get the financial issues. 44% of their revenue comes from maintenance of certification, kind of showing how that extra little boost in income was trying to help them. And Charles Kroll has already gone over why it might have really been that they implemented this program. But the expenses of $59.2 million in a single year of this organization is exorbitant. And there's absolutely no reason why it has to be that expensive. Absolutely not. More importantly, from a guy who served in the United States military and this all-gotten country, spent 26 years with the military, went out in private practice, worked at the VA, worked in every practice environment, private practice, university practice, everything. I can't believe that the revised bylaws in 1998 allow unlimited conflicts of interest to be held by any member of the ABIM board. And then we have this little problem, okay? I was in doing all this stuff, and the more I looked at this, the more crazy I became. This is the web page from the ABIM Foundation, which has now been taken down and replaced with the truth of what actually happened, okay? That says the ABIM Foundation is a not-for-profit foundation established by ABIM in 1999. There it is, right there, plain and simple. That's how it was. And by the way, this is all available on the Internet Archive, which is where I pulled it up. You can look at it yourself. And it's there to continually define medical professionalism. With all due respect, medical professionalism is defined just like pornography. You just got to know it when you see it, okay? And I don't think there's anybody who can actually define medical professionalism. And I would argue that I'm being a hell of a lot more professional right now, telling you the truth of how it's affected practicing U.S. physicians than anything the ABIM Foundation could do. Because what really happened is the ABIM Foundation was created in Pennsylvania, not Iowa, as it says on its tax forms, in October 17th, 1989. And that's a big problem. They were actually, this webpage isn't quite correct. It was actually created as the American Board of Internal Medicine Foundation, all spelled out as one word. But in 1999, they did a clever little trick, and they went to the IRS and they had a name change to the ABIM Foundation. I guess it was getting a little too hard to write out that name. And that's actually how it became, and that's the excuse they're going to use as to why it was actually created in 1999. What they don't tell you is that when it was created in 1999, they magically had $59 million in their bank account. So I asked Dr. Barron, where did that money come from? Well, where it came from was U.S. physicians and the diplomats. They transferred our board certification fees to the foundation, $55 million. And that's what it says on their webpage now. And they did it in a very interesting way with grants as an affiliate member. Now, the foundation is actually supposed to support the ABIM, but instead the ABIM was sending money to the foundation, which didn't make any sense. But then there's this little tricky word here called research. They're sending money over there to do research. Well, I know something about research. So I went ahead and, I log on and now I got to enter my name, and by the way, in order to identify similar types of practice for research purposes, this type of research has no impact on physician certification but can be valuable in understanding how to improve healthcare. Wait a minute, I'm a research subject. Well, the Belmont report would say there's some problems with that. And I think each of you know what this is about, okay? You don't do research without informed consent. because sometimes this is being done for other purposes than what you might really understand, okay? You don't have respect for persons when you're doing research that you don't identify. You don't have beneficence, and you certainly haven't instituted justice. There's three primary principles of investigative research on anyone. And then I looked into things, and you look back and you find out that you buy this cute little condo for $2.3 million, complete with a Mercedes-driven, chauffeur-driven S-Class town car at the time. Now they turned it into a BMW 7 Series for this lovely place, complete with a concierge and a doorman. What the heck does a nonprofit need that for? Okay. Well, really what's going on is maintenance and certification and the ABIM Foundation was created as a lovely social justice experiment by the ABIM and ABMS, okay, with practicing physicians as the subjects, okay? They have never studied what happens to a physician who has failed their recertification. And I went back and looked at every single published failure rate for internists in the United States of America since it began, and the failure rate is 13.2%. What happens to that huge number of people? Well, they got to retake the test. They got to pay more money, or they got to pay them to get their test graded, just make sure that they really did fail, even though it's done on a computer. This is unconscionable in my opinion. Okay. What happens to patient care, patient satisfaction to care when they lose their position? It's never been studied. There's numerous corporate and government conflicts of interest, many of which right now are under DOJ investigation, okay, for overbilling Medicare. And that's a big problem. When Bob Wachter is involved with IPC Hospitalist Company that is now under DOJ investigation, we have a problem. There is also recertification data that they're collecting on us, and they're asking to do all this research. How's it sold? Where's it go? How do they keep it secure? How do I know as a research subject what's happening to me? You see, there's a big revolving door of employment. Chris Cassell exited ABIM after receiving $8 million in compensation during her 10-year tenure to go ahead to the National Quality Forum. And wouldn't you know that Rich Barron came from the National Quality Forum to head the ABIM? What a convenient deal. Physicians are pouring money into the ABIM, and they kind of work a little deal with Congress so that CMS can take taxpayer money to help fund doctors in the program for 2 years. Okay? Most of us would look at this from the outside perspective. This is a kickback scheme using government and taxpayer money. So they got a lot. And if we look down here, the American College of Physicians was happy to collude with this because they got a $1.4 million grant. The Institute of Clinical Investigation was a little creation of the ABIM that just had $3.3 million erased from the books, okay? When it turned out that having physicians do EKG testing didn't quite work out for them. And they give multiple other grants to universities and healthcare organizations. So beyond all these things that Chuck's gone through, the next thing, really the thing that's come up lately is that the ABIM, in order to make sure they keep their money stream going, is using strongman and boss tactics, very typical to the state of Illinois, which I happen to know and love well, okay? Because they want to instill fear. They have, right now, for their director of investigations, they never disclose that he has a 2-time felony convictions for impersonating a police officer and for carrying an unregistered firearm. And that same individual was involved in the raid of the Aurora Board Review course, okay, that happened to magically go and they got a writ to seize. They grabbed the person's computers and then they targeted 2,700 physicians with letters of concern that went to all those doctors because they were at that board review course and they didn't tell on anybody else that were trying to discuss and learn the very content that they created this monster for. Okay, ethically, this is unconscionable, not to mention potentially illegal, because who was handling the evidence? A convicted felon. There's unlimited conflict of interest potential now with these individuals that I've mentioned, and basically this is all to create a monopoly for the ABMS infrastructure. We should also note that the ABMS is a member of the ACGME, the American Hospital Association, okay, the National Board of Medical Examiners, and the Joint Commission on Accreditation of Hospitals, okay? People had to know about this at that organization too, and in fact, most of us can't, unless we have this, okay, ABMS credential, we can't serve as teachers, okay, because we're not ABMS MOC participants. So if that's getting involved here, that needs to change as well, because of the problems that I'm showing here. Anyway, I think that the ABMS MOC brand is has been destroyed by the internet. Now we can look up all this information online. It's all publicly available. It's not a secret anymore, okay? And it's corrupt and irrevocably so. It needs to go away. I don't see any way that people can salvage anything but maintenance of certification going away. I'm fine with board certification, first time, come on in and continuing to do continuing medical education. I think that's legitimate. At least that's ethical. At least that is sane, okay? But what's going on right now is insane. And it's probably being driven by two things, money and politics. It is divisive for our profession. We now have divided this house so far. We have the bureaucratic physicians of these organizations versus the practicing physician on the front line of healthcare. And I would like to side, and I think we'll always win if we're on the front line of healthcare for our patients. Not only is it unethical and costly and discriminatory, it's damaging to those physicians who've been justifiably ridiculed and shamed by not being able to pass an examination after practicing medicine for over 10 years. Crazy. And then there's no proof of benefit to this at all. So why the hell do we keep doing it? I don't quite understand that. But I guess the interesting part to me now is how the hell did we get here? Okay? There's lack of oversight. There's no accountability for this organization. They have unelected members of these specialty boards that are all cronyism, and they just are able to appoint whomever they want. There's no term limits. Lynn Langen, COO of the American Board of Internal Medicine, has been there 44 years. 44 years. There's financial collusion amongst all of our specialty societies, okay? We get it now, it's all public record. Let's be grown-ups and let's end this thing. And I think the practicing physician indifference of this whole thing has also been part. We're all responsible for this. No one really looked into this until this scandal. Really, it was 2014 when they just made it so onerous, people just had had enough. So who will investigate and stop? Okay? It's a story of the little red hen, right? Will I stop MOC? Well, not I, said the ABIM. We're just going to say we're sorry. And then below that, we invited the CFOs of the internal medicine organizations to view our 990s and audit financials, and they've uniformly said they don't see any issue. That is a direct quote. Not I, said the largest medical societies. Okay, they're all out there, the American College of Cardiology, Heart Rhythm Society, and yes, the American College of Physicians, the largest ones that make more money from physicians for certification and teaching maintenance of certification. They're all in it too, and making a lot of money. Not I, said the major medical journal. It'll only cost you $650 to get enroll in our Knowledge Plus program. What a deal, just to keep it going. Not I, said the mainstream media. These are all the people that I've communicated with. None of them would pick up the story outside of the Newsweek and Kurt Eichenwald. So what's happened? We've done it ourselves. Practicing physicians are discovering the benefit for themselves and our patients of collective action. The National Board of Physicians and Surgeons, who will be speaking next, was formed by Paul Tierstein and the leadership of a lot of other guys who realized this whole thing's a scam. And they're working to correct the cost structure. For $86 for 2 years of certification, you're good to go. And now it's up to us to make sure that insurance companies and hospitals recognize the only moderately ethical program that will allow us to continue to practice medicine in the United States and not violate our ethics of delivering medicine. State medical societies, too, have gotten together and they're proposing alternatives and recognizing that the ABMS program and recertification process is broken. We need to assemble the facts and make a credible, formal legal request for investigation of this organization's structure and recertification with appropriate oversight by the appropriate oversight agency, whether it be the IRS, FTC, DOJ, the Iowa Attorney General, the SEC, and the Officer of the Inspector General of the Department of Health and Human Services. It's going to happen, whether we like it or not. So I would suggest that ABIM and ABMS start looking toward a way to resolve the problem. They have to, meanwhile, the state medical societies have to prohibit use of the ABMS MOC requirement for hospital credentials, insurance panel participation, or state licensure. Already, Oklahoma has unanimously passed a relatively strong language that will not allow the use of ABMS for any of those purposes of licensure and for reimbursement or for employment and getting hospital privileges. Kentucky, too, has also worked and passed this law. And right now, before Michigan, there are two bills that will also do similar and have even stronger language for sure for Michigan, and I know that there are many other states lining up. So I would suggest that physicians from now on educate yourself, stay up to date with this website that's been created by practicing physicians because of their disgust with what's going on. Spread the word, educate others. Stop paying for MOC. That's how we're going to strangle the beast. I'm sorry. But until it's really fixed, and not just with, well, we'll do this every 2 years. I'm sorry. You can't parse the same amount of money to keep it going. And then there's also a suit going on right now against the ABIM by a young Puerto Rican physician who was at the Aurora course. He was sued nearly 4 years later. They must be really desperate for cash. And then there is an antitrust suit right now going on with the American Association of Physicians and Surgeons. It is sued for antitrust violations. That suit right now is in right here. The AMA asked it, and the ABMS had it moved here to Chicago. It is in the Northern District Federal Court and is currently under litigation. I would ask everybody to work with their medical staff committees to make sure that they remove MOC requirement from their bylaws, and then work with state legislature and use the language similar to what's available at that website to rid our burden of this unjustified recertification program. Thank you very much.